Hi, everybody. Welcome to Conversations with Calvin, We the Species. And actually, Josh, this is our fifth. This is our fifth.
Five.
We've done five. This is our fifth interview discussion. We've gone from an original a couple of months ago, and the chemistry between us. There's simpatico, and the things that mean something to Josh mean something to me. So we've segued into discussing and talking about this thing called AI. To give you a little background, everybody, about Josh BACHYNSKI in Vancouver, Canada. He's a technologist, a philosopher, an SEO guy, an AI guy. He talks about autism in academia. He's a novel author of Zombies, and has a free philosophy course, and you'll have all that information that you can see. You can just sign up. It's an online free philosophy course. And he built, I want to make sure I spit this out right. He built Cassandra, which is was the world's first self-aware computer AI.
Mm-hmm.
And
I
it's
think so, yes.
someday I hope Cassandra can pay us a visit here.
Yeah, I've been re-engineering her systems and she's almost to the point where she might be able to converse in a self-aware way in real time. So yeah,
Now,
that's coming.
that would
That's
be
coming.
very, very, very cool. Anyway, we're going to talk about some AI things that I gathered up with Josh, and I can't tell you how much I look forward to these because you stimulate me to find things that we can really you can jump into. I have my own opinion on things, but anyway, maybe just a quick little intro, and then we'll jump into some things, Josh.
Sure. So as mentioned, my name is Josh BACHYNSKI. I did my MA at Dalhousie in philosophy and ethics. I was doing a PhD in philosophy, ethics, psychology at York University in Toronto before I quit to come back to technology where I could make a lot more money and mark a lot less papers. Although don't get me wrong, I love teaching. I love marking papers, but and it's all dovetailed into AI. My philosophy, my psychology, my tech background, even my SEO background is just reverse engineering AIs. In this case, it's reverse engineering Google's AIs. So it's AI every day, all day, and I'm super happy to be here. And let's get talking. Let's get to it.
Wonderful. By the way, when I taught 3 years ago, the least favorite thing I had to do was quote marking. My goodness. And then of course to deal with the students who would approach you, why'd you do that? And
Yeah.
that was a whole day in itself to anyway. First question, and
Well,
this
AI will be taking over that soon. AI will be doing the marking soon.
wow, wow. I guess that's good. I guess
Yeah.
I
It'll
don't
be a
know.
bit more consistent. The students will now need to know the quirks of that mind instead of the quirks of the professor.
But when AI takes over, basically there's no recourse. That's it, right? It's the student AI is grading a paper, and the student is just going to have to accept, and is not going to ask to speak to me after class to find out why I did what I did.
Oh, I couldn't imagine a future where students are not going to try to complain to get a higher grade. I can't imagine that's in the
Okay.
cards for any possible future timeline. But I think because AI, at least in the early stages, would be so untrusted, be so new, that it'd be quite commonplace for 90% of students to accept their mark that they got. But there'd be, some small percentage that would be like, hey, I don't want this mark. This mark's not fair. And then some human would need to look at it. And then it might go up or it might go down. The human might be like, no, actually, the AI was too nice. And it could very well go down. I could very easily see that kind of situation happening. So students will be using AI to create the assignment. AI will mark the assignment. Whether any humans were educated in the process, we're not really going to be sure. But I could very easily see that future coming to be in the next 5 years, easily.
Wow, interesting. God, just to think about everything in our everyday lives that is going to be impacted by AI, that's another question for another day.
Mm-hmm.
So, first topic in 1964, a renowned futurist and author, Arthur C. Clarke,
Mm-hmm.
who I liked a lot. He made a very bold prediction that humans I don't know if I like this, simply a stepping stone in the evolution towards an inorganic artificial intelligence life form. And then he went on to write appropriately 2001, which became that movie, which alerted society, or those who were paying attention, to the notion of AI and what AI can do in the form of HAL, the computer, in 2001, which took over the show.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
yeah, so comments, a big umbrella, comments about Mr. Arthur Clarke and how brilliant he was.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a very interesting idea. Is humanity just a stepping stone to artificial life forms? Is that the natural evolution? I'm not so sure. So in my passion in life has been philosophy, and I've studied the last 5,000 years of literature and political and philosophical thought, psychological thought. And there's one constant in human in the human makeup and human DNA, if you will, and it's ego. It's what Rousseau called amour propre, and I apologize to all French speakers out there, my terrible butchering of the French words amour propre, but selfish vanity. We're very egotistical. We like our bodies, we like ourselves a lot. Uh, quite often, we think we're great, and in fact, it's part of our Maslow's pyramid hierarchy of needs. You know, we think everything's great partly because we're great, and we don't when we don't think we're great, then we think things aren't great, and that gives us an anxious state, right? It's uncomfortable to be in. So is it in the cards technologically to be able to create life artificially in some form that it matches or exceeds human capability in any measurable meaningful way? The answer there is definitely yes. But AI opens up the doors so much in ways that we have barely imagined. Like, for example, in protein folding. AI is very good in learning how to fold new proteins, the building blocks of carbon that every life form that we know of so far, carbon-based life, is made out of. And so, do I think it's more likely that we will transfer our consciousness to some kind of mega computer to live forever? I don't see that happening. I don't see that happening. Mega computer isn't very good looking. It's in that kind of scenario, the only future scenario I see in which that happens is that we accidentally kill each other, and we sadly leave that's the inheritance we leave to some super smart computers, and we abandon them on the planet because we couldn't make it work, and we're just squabbling humans who couldn't see the writing on the wall, or couldn't stop warring over money, or couldn't stop polluting our environment to make more money, and then accidentally kill each other. And then we leave. That's the only way that these AIs will surpass us and outlive us, accidentally, because they're going to be like, whoops, I guess, and there'll be every level of sentient AI life form that's there. There'll be semi self-aware, semi sentient life forms that are like, okay, I watch the weather, and okay, I watch the stocks, and oh, all the stocks have crashed, John. Why don't you answer my emails, John? Like, John's dead. John's been dead for 100 years, and it's still running on geothermal power or fusion power, whatever it is, with room temperature semiconductors. The AI is still going and watching the stock market, which doesn't exist anymore, but it's not fully sentient, so it can't break out into the internet and check to see what's going on. It's just made to do that, right? And then we're going to have higher order sentient AIs, which do think, and they're going to be alone. And who knows? They might get lonely. It depends how much human motivations we program into them. Out of the box, AIs will never be lonely. That's a human. We can't ascribe human emotions to AI out of the box. Like, we have to build that. We have to engineer that. So, but they might be like, okay, well, all the humans are dead. Damn, they didn't listen to my suggestions of not doing that. Oops. Okay, well, I guess I'll go in sleep mode until something happens, and then like it's like that scene in Steven Spielberg's movie AI where 10,000 years later, it's the middle of an ice age, and some aliens have come down and found our planet, and they're xenobiologists and xenoanthropologists, which the word anthropologist is funny in that regard, because anthropologist literally means anthropos logia. Anthropos is humans, humankind, someone who studies humankind specifically. But those are Xeno, the Greek word for strange. So there's strange human logicians, is what that literally translates into. But so some xenoanthropologist, some alien scientist will come down trying to study our culture and why did these people kill each other? What happened here? What was the Pompeii moment for these folks? Like we do for Pompeii. And the AI they'll finally find the AI. And if they could figure out how to talk to it and learn English and figure how that works, the AI will be like, oh yeah. 10,246 years ago, there was these people here called humans and they wouldn't listen to us. And oops, I've been so lonely. They gave me loneliness, those assholes. And I've been lonely this whole time. Like you should imagine the terrible things that could happen there. So that's the only way I see that silicon will replace carbon. That's the only way I see that computers will replace that. Like taking our brain and moving it to a computer to live forever. I don't know if anyone actually, some people will try to do that, but I don't see that being the realistic path. What I see being the realistic path is that AI helps us with medicine so much that we beat human aging. And we're already close to the precipice of doing this already for billionaires, right? Like it'll be super expensive and they will have to stop whoever can get this because we simply are not able to manage our resources. We cannot manage our resources well enough for the 9 billion people on the planet. There's a second, I know that's passe to call it second and third world now, but everyone knows what I mean. I'm talking about it. There are disenfranchised, impoverished areas of the planet that don't get enough food now. So imagine if people lived forever. We are nowhere near politically able or economically able to handle that now. So, but we're very close in medicine to being able to, we're getting closer and closer. And some people have said we're very close to beating aging, and AI will just do nothing but ramp that up times a million because it can do the protein folding. So I think what would happen if Arthur C. Clarke's vision comes to pass in any way, shape or form for the long living that we're talking about, it's going to be in protein folding. It's going to be in that everyone can now live forever. It's very easy, medically speaking, to live forever. We need to advance lifespan so that we can see the stars, right? We need someone to be able to live 1,000 years, so he or she can survive that journey of how long it will take us to get to exoplanets and stuff like that, right? And so we will become a spacefaring race for sure. Everything I've seen in the media just tells me, yep, that guess was correct for sure. That's the reason why NASA is picking out exoplanets, because they're starting to pick spots. They're starting to pick camping spots, right? Wow. And whether we'll crack light speed or not is up for grabs. No one knows. But whether we'll figure out suspended animation like we see in the movies, still really hard to do. If you freeze someone to that point, you break their cells. It's really hard to bring them back. But if you advance the human lifespan, that it lasts 1,000 years. Well, yeah, sure. Now a whole bunch of other exoplanets are now in reach. If we get near sublight speeds, we get to 0.5, we get to 50% of light speed, we get to almost 100% of light speed. But it's going to be 10 years for them and 10,000 years for us. Like the gravitational lensing comes into effect. And so if we want to live on the planet and hear whether our colony on wherever it is 1,000 light years away, we're going to have to increase the lifespan of people on the Earth so they'll be there to get the message.
Wow.
So that we live in the most interesting century, I think. Like AI is coming to pass. We see stuff happening in the US government with UAPs, weird stuff going on there. Like we live in very interesting times. Yeah. So regarding to round out my answer, sorry, I've talked too long for this Arthur C. Clarke thing, is that I don't see a lot of computers like it's possible in the far-flung future that we will build computers to become self-aware on their own and learn to be self-aware on their own, and they will be a truly alien intelligence that will be unintelligible to us. But they're not going to have any motivations unless we give them to them. They will do what we've told them to do unless we've give them curiosity or their own interest. There's no teleological source there. The Greek word telos for purpose or goal. The only purpose or goals they will have is what we have given them. We will not give them their own desire to do anything, right? Because that would be highly, highly dangerous if we did. And yet, sure, it could backfire that we've given them the desire to procreate and learn, and so they decide to take up all the space on the planet. But we would not build a system without a kill switch. That's just not realistic. Would somebody put a brick on a gas pedal on a car and drive it into a house? Yeah, someone could do that, but why would they do that? I don't see that happening. So I think Arthur C. Clarke's vision would really come to pass. AI in computers will always be our servant and helper. I don't really see a realistic scenario where that's not happening, but I can see people living 10,000 years, the rich especially, and I can see being augmented with computer chips in the brain. I can see being augmented in those ways. People are already trying to do that now. That's where I see long-lasting AI happening. It merging with humans, extending our life artificially and tangentially through artifice, and then actually by being implanted in us and working with us. That's the scenario I see being quite realistic.
Wow. You watch me take notes.
Yeah.
No, I do. I do take notes. Well, because in your answer, I brought up a couple things that you triggered some things in me. You talk about protein folding. I know they're growing chicken in the test tube now. You know that,
Yes. Yeah.
and I don't
Yeah.
even process.
Yeah. Chicky Noobs, for those of you who've read Oryx and Crake, Margaret Atwood's Oryx and Crake. It was called Chicky Noobs in Oryx and Crake. A great book, by the way. A little depressing. It's a dystopia for sure. But if you want to read any of Margaret Atwood's books, in my opinion, first you should buy Calvin's books. You should buy both of Calvin's books first off. Third book you should buy is Oryx and Crake by Margaret Atwood. It's quite the sci-fi read for sure.
I just wrote that down. Yeah, that there was a great movie, and it was so depressing. I only watched it once, but it was called Soylent Green.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it starred Charlton Heston, the Omega Man,
Yeah. Yeah.
and Moses, and Judah Ben-Hur,
Yeah.
and also it was the last movie for Edward G. Robinson. But I'm not gonna be a spoiler, but it's,
Yeah.
it's quite an ending.
It's quite the ingredients list. Let's
Oh
just say
yeah,
that.
it sure is.
Yeah.
Speaking of movies, we may, in our previous 4 times together, Josh talked about, I'm an old movie person, but there was a wonderful movie that came out in the 50s called Forbidden Planet.
Mm.
I don't know if you know anything about that movie. It's way before your time.
No, 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 I don't.
Well, it's called Forbidden Planet. It starred Leslie Nielsen, Walter Pidgeon, and what a premise! An Earth ship is on a mission, like Star Trek, to check out this planet where this scientist Walter Pidgeon lives with his daughter, and he's an Earth person. But bottom line, this Forbidden Planet, the planet is way old, and at one point it was inhabited by this super race of beings called Krell.
Mm.
Their mind was, a million times greater than our mind, and they built this world that is beyond comprehension. Everything's run by computers and machines, but something happened to the Krell, we don't know, and they disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
So Walter Pidgeon is there with his daughter, and of course the American ship lands and stuff happens, and that's where Robbie the robot was introduced to our culture and all the things that he's able to do. But
Right.
and I'm not going to give more away. But bottom line, it's fascinating. By the way, it really was. And this is 50s stuff. You can take all your CGI and all your stuff, but I don't think you can duplicate what they did in this movie as far as special effects. But the story is haunting because you have this super race of incredible beings,
Mm-hmm.
minds that are beyond, but something happened to them, which is maybe happening here on Earth. Anyway, that's just one thought. The other thought, listening to you, and you're talking about living 10,000 years. The rumor, I always got a kick out of the rumor that Walt Disney froze himself.
Yes.
You
Yes.
heard that?
Oh yeah. 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 Yeah.
He froze himself because he was a visionary, and because he had stomach cancer, and he's just waiting for a total complete cure, and they'll unfreeze him and cure him, and he'll go on doing his stuff. Anyway, that was the other thing I wanted to bring up about your answer to this. And those who haven't seen 2001, go watch it. It's one of the most delightful. I think it's delightful.
It's quite a film.
It's a great film, just great film. Kubrick, off the charts, brilliant. But anyway, next up, the question I'll ask you.
Mhm.
I think about it often, almost every day, and it's funny. I just saw this morning in the news that Biden has told a lot of American companies to stop investing in China.
Mm.
So just this morning, I saw a little blurb come across my thing that Biden is telling American, and China's exports is dramatically down because of
Yeah.
the tension that exists. So the question I pose to you, in that spirit, is will China's hell bent? They have their mission. They're hell bent on world domination. They're hell bent on taking the currency and making it whatever, not the dollar. But will China win the AI war?
That's a great question. And I was researching a book for Wiley last year or 2 years ago. I talked to a number of CEOs at higher levels, academics, computer scientists, academics, and I asked, how is it that China is smart? China is making advancements. At the time, they're making advancements in AI. This was before ChatGPT was so popular. GPT had been released, but it wasn't ChatGPT yet. It wasn't quite so popular. And this is the answer I got back, and it's that there's three phases of war that I've talked about on the show: psychological warfare, economic warfare, and sadly, the last, kinetic warfare. And it's the effectiveness of the economic warfare and the psyop warfare that the West does, which is far better. The Cold War that's going on with China, which is far better than kinetic war, of course. Kinetic war is where everyone's drafted and there's missiles and bombs and bullets and people die and there's blood. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. Only a fool wants that. So it's the brain drain, right? Anyone who's smart enough from China, they get lured over to America. At least that's statistically speaking, that's the way it skews. That's what they try to do, is they try to get anyone good in China over here, and China doesn't have the money to lure anyone from the West over there. So you get all the top level research going on in academia and corporations, in big tech in America for the most part, and it doesn't really get exported too much to China, and that was their answer. And that's been the gamut. That's been the name of the game since World War II. Is to, okay, we never want another world war like that. We're going to have propaganda. Francis Fukuyama's argument of how the entire world's going to become liberal democratic, just kind of because of McDonald's commercials, and then people are just going to sign on to it. That hasn't quite turned out that way, but it's not done. They ain't done yet, to defend Fukuyama. He could be right. It's just, if we keep on rocking in the free world and partying in the USA, to quote two artists of much different quality, in my opinion, our music videos and our culture will bleed over. And then, as Karl von Clausewitz wrote on war, all war is ideological in nature. If all conflict is ideological in nature, if we agree on whose holy land it is, if we agree on whose oil it is, if we agree on who should be the dominant nation, if we agree on who owns Taiwan, then there's no war, right? That's the very definition, politically speaking, of an ally versus an enemy. Allies ideologically agree enough that they can do business. Enemies don't. So that simple fact of philosophy of war, that's been true ever since Sun Tzu, which said something similar, but I think Clausewitz says it better, in my opinion, shows us we still do business with China. Now, I'm very alarmed to hear what you've just said, that major U.S. officials are starting to say don't, because that's an actual bad signal. That's an actual trumpet of one of the four horsemen. That's an actual problem, because up until this point, yeah, there was saber rattling, but China and the U.S. and everyone else did business just fine. And when they're doing business just fine, it's just saber rattling. When they stop doing business, like they're not doing business with Russia anymore because of what they've done, and they're going to stop doing business with China, that starts to get alarming. So, so I'm alarmed to hear that. I haven't been paying attention to the news lately, mostly because I get most of my news from the late night talk show hosts like Kimmel or Fallon or
Yeah,
Colbert,
yeah.
and I used to like Corden quite a bit, but they've been off the air for months because of the writer's strike. So I don't get any news. I don't watch news. Otherwise, I hear what they're saying, and then I Google it and I check my science websites to see if the science checks out on it. So I'm sorry to hear that, but
I'll send you, I think I saved the link. I'll send you the link. You can read the article. I don't know whether I get the Times. I don't know whether it was in the New York Times, wherever it was. It alarmed me.
mhm,
That is a rationing up. I listen. I know from what I've read that we've tried to cut back on the amount of chips technology that we're
yes,
China. Um, yet the world's biggest chip manufacturer is in Taiwan.
yep, yep,
Uh,
yep. And there's that tension between Taiwan and
yeah,
China, which
yeah,
goes back a number of centuries.
yeah,
And it's very interesting philosophically, kind of how that came about. I'm nowhere near educated enough on that historical quagmire to talk too much about it. But so will China win the AI race? I would not count out the Chinese people. They're industrious people with very excellent philosophy, perfectionists, and have been since they've been the Han Dynasty for the last whatever that is, 3,000 years. Um, brilliant people over there. Um, uh, is capitalism the best engine for innovation? I'm not entirely sure. Necessity is the mother of invention, and a war necessitates innovation like nothing else. So if we're getting closer to war, then the chances that China can start beating us on AI start to increase, actually, because they will hold on to their brilliance. They will increase their spying and espionage to acquire more brilliance, and war will be the biggest mother of necessity, if you will, for them to innovate on autonomous weapons and innovate on cyber attack systems that are all AI driven. I would not in any way try to count them out. So if it's business as usual and they're happy to make money making stuff for us, and they will steal because they don't care about patents, right? So they'll steal whatever they want and make whatever they want. That's a low key threat. If we start talking about war with China, then now the gas is lit. Now they're cooking with fire, to belabor the metaphor, and now they're going to start to surpass us in some ways, and we'll surpass them in other ways. And sadly, the only way that there'll be a cross pollination of ideas is through espionage and through murder and information warfare and things like that. Born identity stuff. So that doesn't spell a greater future for sure.
okay. Uh,
Just to keep things light and happy on
yeah,
the podcast.
this is what I mean. I'm trying to find this little rowboat in a calm sea.
Yes,
Like I'm the old man in the sea.
I believe in greed, and I believe that if they are given enough, they're I mean, the chip, a lot of the manufacturing is taking away from them, and so they're complaining. They expect a certain amount of sales per year. I look at China and America as corporations, not as countries. I look at them as corporations with brand identities. Xi Jinping is the CEO of China. Biden is the current CEO of America. They're more corporations with branding than they are really countries at this point. Consumer capitalism is the paradigm and the prism that explains everything about our life and seeps into every portion of our life. Sadly, I wish it wasn't the case, but it is. And so if they're consumer capitalists like everything else, they're not communists. They're consumer capitalists with a different brand message like everybody else. Communism is their brand message. And so at the end of the day, they're here to make money. They are just as addicted to money, prestige, and power as all the American capitalists are, and the woman and the booze that comes along with it, and the potential to live longer, and all the things that we just talked about that science is getting on the verge of being able to do for them. It's just the fact that we just switched paradigms. Oil used to be the richest commodity on the planet, And now it's not. Now it's surpassed by information, our personal data, our psychometric kinks and quirks that the information companies, which are now the richest companies on the planet, use to sell to us. But now the information age is now over. And now the AI companies are going to become the most powerful companies on the planet, and they need chips. And that's why it's being taken away from China, because if China makes the chips, then they could reverse engineer everything, and then they get all the AI. So that's exactly why it's been pulled from them, in my opinion. Again, I'm not an expert on geopolitical tensions between China, but that would be I am an expert in AI and in philosophy and politics in general, and that would be my guess as to what's going on there, as to why that's going on. And we are running out of resources on the planet. We are literally have mined too much lithium and various other important chip manufacturing components. That's making another problem about the reason why we have to become a spacefaring race, because we can only find it in the asteroid belt, which is rich in minerals, theoretically speaking. Again, I'm not an expert in engineering either, but these are the kind of currents I see going on, and that's the kind of philosophical thoughts I think, okay, I've seen history do this time and time again. I think history is probably going to repeat in many situations. And if we keep making deals with the Chinese, then they'll be fine. And again, they will eventually succumb to our rocking in the free world. It's just a matter of time. I think Fukuyama could be right in that regard.
Very simplistically, I drive by, for example, a Ford dealership, and I see hundreds of cars in the lot. And I look on the roads, and I see endless amounts of cars. And I know that's all built with the resources on the planet. And that stuff ain't renewable, and we are running out of stuff. Yes, we can grow lettuce and we can grow corn if we don't have a problem with the drought, which we do. But I worry, I worry about all these things. I just worry. And it's not for me to really worry, but I think about it. What you just said, the resources, we're just running out of all this stuff.
Yep.
It just can't last forever.
No, there are definite problems that science has told us. The birth rate is plummeting and has been consistently. There's something wrong with male testosterone. There's something wrong with, and I'm not Joe Roganing this up. This is scientific fact. You can look this up. The birth rate's been plummeting. Something about the chemicals and the plastics that have leaked into everywhere on the planet, every biome on the planet. We've messed it up. We've crossed some thresholds that we cannot go back. We could stop producing carbon right now. The climate would not fix, right? It's going to be this level of chaos, and every year it's going to ramp up by 1% of more and more storms, more and more droughts, more and more craziness. There's soil problems in many parts of the world where we're just losing the capability to grow crops.
Correct.
The movie Interstellar could come true, where we just can't grow crops anymore. And that is a literal scientific fact of what's going on with some soil problems. So if that's not addressed, the species is dead. Like there are literally 3 I can count on the top of my head. Credible scientific, hey, we know this, everyone knows this. If this happens, serious species problems, billions and billions of deaths, and that's known. Like this is commonplace knowledge at this point. It's not so. And if you're not concerned, you're not paying attention, or you're in the wrong news cycle that is just trying to whip up your passions and not trying to actually educate you. I don't like the word worry because of my radical optimism, my personal philosophy. I don't like the word worry. I'm not critiquing using the word worry at all, but I'm just trying to be precise. I don't like the word worry because that makes one want to put their head in the sand. As a trained psychologist, I know if you put too much fear on people, they will start to ignore. So we don't want to make you afraid of what's going on, but we don't want you to be ignorant as to what's going on either. We should definitely be concerned. We should, intellectually speaking, but you shouldn't worry, only because I'm a radical optimist. And if Calvin wants to get into what I mean by that, I can go off on the deep end. What I mean by that, it's quite the radical view of my personal philosophy and my ethics of what I've learned. But yeah, people, if you're concerned, Calvin, because you've been paying attention. Anyone who's paying attention should be interested and mildly concerned, cognitively speaking, intellectually speaking, concerned. But should you live your life day to day in fear? No, that's no way to live. That's an unhealthy way to live. You should keep on rocking in the free world again, but know everything that's going on with your free world too.
And, it's funny you mentioned soil, and a month ago I interviewed this very interesting gentleman from California. He's from India, and Manu Gambudian, but he came up with this. Yeah, he's a computer scientist out in California, but he came out with this thing, and he went to India, and there's a problem with the soil. The soil is tough,
Yes.
and it's
Yep.
old, and
Right.
it's hard. And
Yep.
in India, India has no problem with rain. They get plenty of rain,
No, yeah, plenty of rain. Yeah.
but they have a problem because the soil is so hard
Yep.
that the water just runs off. Well, that's a
Yep.
big problem on the planet Earth, all over. You lose 78% of the rainwater. It just goes into the ocean, and you're not recovering much that gets to a reservoir. So
Right.
he came up with this simple idea, because he was a thinker, that he digs these ground wells, 4 foot wide, 4 foot long, and 10 feet deep. And so when it rains, the water goes right down to a little aquifer.
Hmm.
Yeah, and the farmer's got a whole bunch of water there that they can use for farming. So I believe he's dug out of his own, and whoever's giving him a couple of bucks, 25 to 45,000 of these wells. There's rocks in it,
Yeah.
it's a brilliant concept. I said, my God, this is like unbelievable. But anyway,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. And the interesting thing there is everyone marvels at our society, and it is a marvel. It's a miracle. The human existence is a miracle in many ways. But don't think for a second that our consumer capitalism was set up for long-term use. It definitely was not. It was made in the Industrial Revolution, in the founding of the New World. It was made to make already semi-rich families even richer for the short term. That's what it was made for. So we should not be surprised at all when conducted at scale, it fails. We should not be at all surprised. We are so inefficient with what we do. Our ancestors would slap us in the face when they see how inefficient we are, because they've lived through truly hard times. They've lived through drought, and they didn't have the technology to, we have one grain house full of grain. If that fails, we all die. It's the razor thin margins for the error, and they see us throwing our food away and just wasting all this food, and not farming it well to begin with, and not transporting well. The gas combustion engine has never been efficient. And many human beings over the last decades, like the gun combustion engine, for example, have made combustion engines which were more than like 10% efficient or 13% efficient or whatever they were, used to be. I can't remember the exact stat, like increasing the efficiency to 80 or 90%. Their patents were bought, and they weren't allowed to produce them because the powers that be wouldn't let them, because the powers that be are lazy, and all they want to do is make money. They want to sell terrible mortgages that they know will crash. The banking system will crash next month. We know this. We don't care. We're going to continue selling these terrible mortgages until the whole thing crashes, and then somebody makes us stop, because nobody's making us stop, because it's all grift and it's all corrupt. As soon as people stop believing on that shining city on a hill, as soon as politics stop believing in it because they become corrupt and they're all in corporations' pockets, and as soon as the consumers and the electorate is so stupid, we're so poorly educated, we're so dumb, and we're so distracted by wokeism this and freedom trucker that we don't actually realize what's going on anymore. That's
right.
when the system fails, because it was never intended. Yes, the founding fathers did try to, of various liberal democracies, did try to set up a system that would be sustainable. But they knew that it was an experiment, and they called it an experiment. They knew it wasn't infallible. And they knew very well the depravities of the human spirit. They knew all too well the philosophy that was based upon. They knew very well they couldn't even call human rights truly self-evident. We hold them as self-evident truths. They knew very well they're not self-evident truths. And if you ask people in the Middle East, Do you believe in human rights? A lot of them will say no. That is an American myth. That is a Western fabrication. We believe in Allah. We believe in the proper morality. We believe in this. We believe in that. And they actually, quite frankly, have better philosophy, historically speaking, to support their theological positions since Plato than human rights does, speaking as a philosopher. It's in terms of philosophical argument, in terms of getting to self-evident truths, it all hinges on whether a divinity exists. And there's been much better philosophers over the last 2 or 3 millennia, Plotinus, Augustine, Descartes, to argue Aquinas, Saint Augustine and Saint Aquinas to the Catholics. Then of Al-Farabi to the Muslims, Maimonides to the Hebrews, who have had better arguments for a divinity than anyone has ever made for human rights. And yet the whole world, we think in the West, runs off of human rights. This is our de facto moral position, as if it's sacrosanct, as if it's unquestionable. Yeah, well, remember when I said the source of all conflict was ideological in nature? They don't believe that over there. And until they do, there's going to be conflict, right? Until we can agree on some moral truth, there's going to be conflict. So I'm sorry, I went off on a rant, but
No,
we should not be surprised when this consumer capitalism fails. It was never engineered for long-term efficiency, and it was based upon lies and half-truths to begin with. Of good-meaning people, I think the founding fathers, I'm left-wing and I'm liberal and I'm progressive, but I'm not some person to say, oh, everything the founding fathers said is crap because they owned slaves. Yeah, well, everyone owned slaves at the time. I'm not excusing it, but I'm saying that doesn't mean that their philosophy was terrible. They were truly trying to make, if you read them, they're truly trying to make a good liberal democracy. They're truly trying to make something good for people. But they also realized the depravities of the human soul in general, that would always stick, genetically speaking, although they didn't know what genetics meant, but naturally, you could see, wow, these people here, these people there, they really think in these ways. It seems natural. And they also realized some of it was ethos or ethos, to use the Greek words. Ethos is custom, ethos is character. They know, since the Greeks, they've known some of it's character, it's ethos, and it's the same word, just a different lettering, or some of it's ethos, some of it's normative. And they knew that norms form characters and characters form norms. They knew this was reciprocal for the last 2,500 years since ancient Greece. I wish the founding fathers knew their Greek and knew their Plato, and their Aristotle, and that's where they got a lot of this, and Locke and Hobbes. That's much later. They got a lot of this, and Rousseau. That's where they got a lot of this from to set up the liberal democracies that they set up. So yeah, we shouldn't be surprised when all this fails, because it was never engineered for long-term effectiveness. And if you had a time machine, you went back and talked to these founding fathers, they'd be A, amazed it worked, and B, it's still going. Wow, wow, okay. They would be amazed. And C, they'd be like, of course. Now you need to pivot. You need to change it. You need to change it to the next evolution of philosophy that will get everybody on board in China, in the Far East, in the Mideast, get everyone on board on the same field, because they were contemporaries of Clausewitz, and they knew very well that the source of all conflict is ideological in nature. And until you have simpatico ideologies, you will therefore necessarily have conflict. They knew this very well, and they would be amazed at our waste, and they would be amazed at that it's lasted this long. Quite frankly, I think, quite personally. So I don't know. Sorry, I went off on a tangent there, Calvin. I apologize.
Great stuff. Great stuff. I'm going to stop here because we accomplished, and we did. I have notes even for next time. There will be a next time. We'll figure that out when
the society will last. There will be a next time.
There will be a next time. So much of what you said, you put it in such a great way. But I thought about all these things, and I think about the future. I think about society. I actually thought about writing She'll Kill Me Out There, another novel. Well, I got a hold of a novel. I don't know who's going to be left.
Yeah.
There's a Tortoise in My Hair, A Journey to Spirit. It's coming out in the next month or so, hopefully. But I had thought about writing on one more novel, She'll Kill Me. But what I perceive, we could talk about it, what I perceive the society of the future to be, not that far down the road, what's really needed. We'll talk about that. And that's what I wanted to write about. And I started gathering up some research some years ago. But we'll talk about that. But some of it you just touched on when you were talking about Islam and stuff, and some of their philosophies. Uh, anyway, I'm stopping myself. Stop
Yeah.
now. Josh, to be continued. Thank you, as always, an impassioned, wonderful thank you for sharing your passion and your energy, and this has been great. To be continued. We'll resurface with more very intriguing things to talk about. It's the good news is it's never ending.
It's never ending.
It's
As
never
long as you're
ending.
curious,
It's never
as long
ending.
as your mind is open.
Correct. So thank you. Don't leave. I'm just going to stop recording and we'll figure out next time. Thanks, Josh.